Destination Medicine is a collaborative initiative of regional training hubs. This is one of a number of episodes produced on behalf of the Western New South Wales Local Health District and shares stories from doctors working across the LHD. Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Peter Letts. Just imagine, you're working in a fulfilling job that helps care for people and the community. A position full of variety and that you can mould to suit your life when changes take place. And on top of that, you get to raise your young family on a little farm that fuels your lifelong love of animals and sustainability. This is the life of Dr. Kerrie Stewart, a regional GP based in Parkes in New South Wales. In this episode, she describes how pleased she is that living rurally doesn't preclude her being involved in teaching and research. Dr. Stewart starts by explaining why she chose to study medicine rather than her other interest, veterinary science.
I decided to study medicine because I wanted a career that was able to be done anywhere, so anywhere in Australia, but potentially anywhere in the world. I wanted a career that was working with people, so I really love people and I enjoy people. And I pursued general practice, I think, because I really valued the variety and the way that you can really shape your career and that it can grow and change with how your life and your life circumstances grow and change. Back in the day, I grew up on farms, so born on a sheep station out between Cobra and Ivanhoe, and then grew up on another property near Coonabarabran, and I loved animals as well. And I toyed around with being a vet, but I decided that being a vet, unfortunately or fortunately, depending for the animal, it's the owner that gets to determine sort of how that animal's potentially treated and managed by the vet, whereas in medicine, within all reason, we work, first do no harm and then do what we can to promote health and well-being. And that has certainly been something I've really enjoyed in medicine. And so I do it in the country because I still love animals and I have a little farm and I get to enjoy all the great things about country life and get to engage every day with really meaningful relationships with people, both patients and colleagues as well. It's a great collegial practice, medicine in the rural areas. So I went into medicine straight after school. So I actually didn't get into medicine to start with. I actually didn't get in the first round and went and did science law for a year. And then after sort of 6 months decided actually I do really like medicine and that's still my passion. And so reapplied and got in the second time. So no, I did undergraduate medicine at University of New South Wales and finished medicine. I'd met my future husband while I was doing medicine and he's Canadian. And so I finished up my medicine degree and took off around the world. I did not go straight into internship. I took a year and travelled with my best friend who actually has come back. So she's a pharmacist and she's actually come back this year to do medicine as a mature student. So she and I travelled through South America and different places and then came back and did my internship and residency in Dubbo, which was close to home but not quite home. And then I've pursued general practice since then. And again, for the flexibility and the variety and the really exciting kind of career pathway that you can take doing general practice.
So tell us then about your current role. How would you describe it?
Oh, look, many and varied. So I am a GP by training. So I have a fellowship in general practice, but the roles that I fill in the Central West are many. And so I am a general practitioner and I do work one of the local general practices. I also do GP VMO work, so working up at the local hospital, and I get to do some really fun things. I run a fracture clinic each week there, which is great. Always interesting, some great stories, the walking wounded and the escapades they get up to. I also work a lot in medical education, and so I'm a regional director of training for our Western New South Wales and ACT, which is a big region. It's essentially from the Great Dividing Range west, and so we have a region that goes right down to the Victorian border, out to the South Australian border and up to Queensland. And so being able to work in that training space, so helping to train and oversee registrar training in that location, which includes Canberra and the ACT, so very diverse. It goes all the way from Canberra to Burke and Lightning Ridge and Broken Hill. So that's a really great part of my working week. I also work with the HETI Rural Generalist Program, and so that's supporting general practitioners who want to do advanced skills. And so they may be skills in, anaesthetics, emergency medicine, palliative care, mental health, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, things like that. So that's fantastic, looking at really upskilling our general practice workforce to meet, the service needs of rural and remote communities. And then I also work with Kerrie Stewart University. And so this year we have our first cohort of students who are training out in our Central West Rural Clinical School. So it's fantastic to partner with Kerrie Stewart University and the School of Rural Medicine and start to train these students in these locations that haven't traditionally had long-term student placements. And it's just fantastic to watch these students come into our communities, become part of the community. They're actually a really valuable part of our workforce. You know, they work so well under supervision and they're just, you know, they're functioning at much higher levels than I would expect, you know, third-year students to function at. So that's very exciting. And I've just taken on a role with the Western LHD, so doing some medical service directing in our local area. So looking at how we can really support and enhance our workforce. So very varied is how I would describe my role. Always exciting, always interesting, and a really diverse week. No week is ever the same. In fact, no day is ever the same. So it's a wonderful career and a wonderful diversity of roles.
It is so diverse. What does an average week look like for you then?
Yeah, look, my average week, there is no average week, I think. All different. It's great in and of itself. So yeah, look, Mondays, I also have 3 children. And so Mondays traditionally is sort of my day with my youngest. And so I do actually go to a mother's group and a play group with my little 3-year-old on a Monday morning, which is a great way to start the week. And then usually it's a variety of meetings and phone calls and whatnot on the Monday afternoon when he's having a nap, to be honest. So always a little bit of juggle with work and family. Tuesdays is a day that I always do medical education, so the Rural Director of Training, and some work with Hetty on that day. Wednesday is always my clinical day, so doing some time up at the hospital. I also supervise a number of registrars, and so often heading down to the practice to work with them. And Thursdays and Fridays is a mix of sort of medical education and my other roles.
That is a lot. I'm tired just listening to you talk about it all.
I think there's a difference between busyness for busy sake. And I think you know when you're in an area that is of, I'm not saying high value is what gives you, but you know when you are busy, when you're doing a lot of work and yet you don't feel tired. And so I think while my weeks are always packed and it is a juggle, but I'm never weary. Yes, I can be physically tired or mentally tired, but I'm never weary. I'm never worn out. I'm always energized and always uplifted and inspired and encouraged. And I think that's when you know that you are in a profession and in a role that is where you're meant to be. And that's been the great thing. You know, the work I do now is very, very different to the work I did when I had 2 little kids, 2 under 2. I did a lot more very much part-time, a bit of clinical work. It's been a luxury and such a blessing to be able to move my career with my personal life and with my interests and my skill sets. And that's such a privilege. And it's, you know, it's the reason that I love my work. And so, yes, busy but never weary is probably how I'd say that. Sometimes tired, but never weary.
It is a real privilege to love what you do and not that many people get to do it. So it's wonderful to hear how passionate you are about it. And also that you're living in a space, in an area in the country that you absolutely love. And you're in Parkes at the moment. What attracted you to living in Parkes?
That's a great question. If you'd asked me 10 years ago, Kerrie, where will you be living? I probably would never have said Parkes for no reason than no connections per se to this area. My husband works at North Parkes Mine, and so I was doing some work at Dubbo Base Hospital, had our first child, and so decided we would come to Parkes for my maternity leave for 12 months, and so Wade would then not have to commute to and from Parkes. And here we are, literally 10 years later, 3 children and 10 years later, living and working in Parkes, and it's a wonderful community for so many reasons. But look, I think you've kind of raised a really important point around the fact that you can live rurally and you can have a really fulfilling and rewarding and varied career. And so I think, sometimes there's this thought that you're going to be a GP and head out into the country and that's sort of a dead end or a limited kind of career where you'll eventually reach sort of the maximum scope of what you can do and what you can achieve. Whereas I think, it's a really great example that there's so much more that can be done. And in fact, I think incredible amounts that can be done and you can be involved in so many different things no matter where you are living and working in Australia. And that's certainly been my experience, that living and working rurally is absolutely no limitation to involvement in things like research, academic, governance, leadership, mentoring, medical education, all those sorts of things. So I really want to encourage anyone who's thinking of a career in general practice, but a career rurally, that there's really such incredible opportunities.
Yeah. And also you've bought a farm. So that talks as well to your love of animals and sustainability. And so you really are living kind of the best of both worlds.
Absolutely. And it's a great place to raise children, and it's a great place to be able to come home and to unwind and to really connect with country and with, the environment. And yeah, it's a wonderful environment to be living and working.
Are there any other areas of medicine that you trained in that adds to your everyday practice?
Yeah, so I did a lot of exploring in my early training. So in my intern and resident year, I did a huge variety of terms, really exploring what it is that I loved and what I enjoyed in medicine. And that was, again, a great benefit of being in a regional hospital, is that I was able to really have a choice. Sometimes in our city hospitals, we're doing relief terms or night terms or those sorts of things, whereas in the regional hospital, I got to do everything from, mental health and pediatrics to obstetrics to anaesthetics, which was great. I did some additional time doing orthopedics, which I love orthopedics, but I really didn't necessarily enjoy the prospect of, even once you're qualified as an orthopedic surgeon, potentially being on call or having to come in the middle of the night to sort of repair somebody who's badly broken. And then I did some additional emergency training and work as well. And again, loved the variety of that work, loved the human interaction. But again, even as a fellowed, emergency physician, you're still on call. You're still needing to come in sometimes in the middle of the night, for people who are really unwell. And so I knew that I wanted a family, and I knew that I liked variety, but I also like my sleep. And so I thought, what kind of career can I sort of combine all of these things and potentially look at part-time training if I have children? And certainly I really value being at home with the children when they're little and having a bit of that flexibility. And so that's what really, I think, led me down the general practice pathway. And now the variety of things that I do as a general practitioner. So I love doing my orthopedic clinic because I love orthopedics, and I'm not awake at 2:00 putting someone back together. I do it at the very civil hours, between 9 and 12 on a Wednesday morning. And it's really wonderful. And it's such a privilege, I think, in the country to, I know that I can call my regional centre and the orthopedic team are there to support. And I really appreciate that. And it's so valued to be able to work within my scope, but to have the support of the specialist. And that's a really important collegial relationship that needs to be built. And so appreciative to have that in our region.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people use the term GP and RG interchangeably. What's the difference? Can you tell us?
Yeah, so a GP is a general practitioner. And so that's someone that's achieved the fellowship of either an ACRM or RACGP. An RG is what we call a rural generalist. And so that is a doctor who's done an additional skill, an advanced skill. And that may be in something procedural like anaesthetics, emergency medicine or obstetrics, or it could be something non-procedural. So, mental health, palliative care, those sorts of things. And so our rural generalists tend to have those broader skills and usually emergency skills as well. Whereas our general practitioners don't necessarily have to. They could work in a general practice setting where, yes, they still need to resus someone if they happen to have an event in the waiting room. But all things being equal, hopefully it's a lot more non-acute consulting and less procedural work per se. So that's the difference. Both colleges have a pathway. So ACRM, when you do the Australian College of Rural and Remote Medicine Fellowship, you need to do an advanced skill. So that is a 4-year program. With the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, there is a 3-year program, which gives you fellowship of the RACGP. And then there's the 4-year program, which is the RACGP RG or Rural Generalist. And the expectation there is that trainee would have done 26 weeks of emergency medicine and a 12-month advanced skill, and so have that broad skill set to be able to work in those locations that need those general procedural skills.
Now, you described some of the elements of general practice that you love. What do you think are the elements or qualities of the person to become a general practitioner? What kind of person do you think is best placed to become a GP?
So first and foremost, I think GPs need to be people who are kind and want to connect with other people, but they also need to be kind and connected within themselves. And so like all medical clinicians, and I think all humans, being able to look after yourself and being able to maintain your own well-being is a really important part of being any carer or any caring profession. Because when you look after yourself and you have, fullness and well-being within yourself, you've got that excess or the additional that you can share and care for other people. And I think that's a quality that's really important, as I said, for all carers, but very much for general practitioners, because we do see such a variety of people and we see them, throughout their whole lifetime sometimes. And so being able to connect with them and be that safe place and be a person that can continue to walk with them in their journey of health and well-being and sometimes illness and, even death is something that requires a lot of stamina. So, yes, I think that's really important. And I think self-care is perhaps one of the least selfish things that we can do, because if we're caring for ourselves, then no one else needs to care for us. And so that's actually a really important quality of general practitioners. As I said, I'd argue it's an important quality for all carers, but I think that's really important. I think GPs' communication is very important, both with patients and families, but also with colleagues. I think a person who's enthusiastic for lifelong learning, and again, I don't think that's unique to GPs, I think it's across the board. Often creativity, so particularly in rural and remote areas, you may not have all the resources that you're used to having or that you may want. And so knowing how to make do and how to practice safely, potentially in an environment that might be a little bit, resource reduced, is a really great attribute to have as a GP, and particularly as an RG or a rural proceduralist or a rural generalist.
It's interesting. You're so right about communication and connecting with your patients. It's so often with the short time span that you have with each patient, it can be very easy to start seeing people as a number and for patients to start feeling like a number and lose that personal care. I've had that experience myself, and trying to navigate and find someone who sees you along your path, along your health journey. It's a very important experience, I think, and the great GPs are able to do that.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that great GPs are able to do is to know, that they are there to partner with this person. So caring for them and loving them and walking with them in their health journey is very different to having a vested interest in their health outcomes. What that patient may see as their success in their health and well-being or their health journey may be very different from what the GP personally may want for themselves. But having that skill to sit with that person and have the information to make those decisions is really important. And sometimes, having healthy boundaries can be challenging. And so knowing, not your circus, not your monkeys, you're there to support the patient and to really, show them that you care and that you are connected and that you're there to walk with them. But at the end of the day, that patient makes their health decisions and your role really is to make sure they've got all the information to do that.
Yeah. There's so much preparation and study and almost an aura around medicine and becoming a doctor. What do you think people just can't prepare for about the medical profession, GP or otherwise? What doesn't fall under that halo or that preconceived notion? What stands out for you?
Look, I recently heard a much more senior colleague than myself say, no one ever tells you that you're in the bad news business. And I thought that was really interesting because I actually have to say quite frequently I will see patients at a catastrophic point in their life. Something awful has happened, they're sick or a loved one is sick or, awful things have happened. And I'm often, yes, you're in the bad news business, but I have to say I'm often so inspired by the strength and the resilience and the sheer grit and determination and stoicism and vulnerability often that we see in people at these times of crisis. And I'm often humbled, and I wonder if I were in their shoes, would I be upright? How would I be coping? So yes, we're in the bad news business, but we're also in the business where you get to see human beings at times in their life and be incredibly close to them when they are so vulnerable or so strong. So I think the rawness of humanity is perhaps what we're never truly prepared for. And once again, that's why I think a really important quality for us as doctors is to be able to connect with ourselves and to be kind and compassionate and to have self-care, to be able to sit with the rawness of humanity. And when you can do that, I think come what may, whether it's good news or bad news, whether the person's having a great day or a terrible day, you can connect with them and walk with them. And I don't know if you can ever prepare someone for that. I think you learn on the job, and patients are our best teachers. I've learned more from my patients about how to just be, in good times and bad times, and how to truly support another human being by my patients. I don't know if we can lecture that or teach that or prepare them for that.
What advice would you give to a medical student who's unsure of their career path, whether it's GP, specialisation, or even to continue the journey? It's harrowing. What would your advice be?
Yeah, so I think lighten up. Enjoy the good things. There's great things about medicine. Yes, there's tough days. And I think, having those, learning the skills to be able to get through those tough times and to really keep yourself on track. Career-wise, I think we live alongside our profession. So we are not, people go, we want to create doctors. Yes, we do. And I completely agree with that. There's qualities in doctors we want, but we have a life alongside of medicine. So we are a doctor, but we also are a mum, a wife, whatever other things we choose to. And so I think really looking at what you want your life to be like, and I mean that in a really broad sense, and to really think about the lifestyle, the kind of work-life balance, what's truly important to you, and then to really think about the career that you may choose or that you're thinking of pursuing, and looking at, finding mentors or people that have done that and really understanding. And as I said, I went through and I love orthopedics, but I looked at the lifestyle and went, that's not for me. That's not going to be compatible with what I truly want in life. I love the medicine. And so I think kind of starting with the end in mind is perhaps, it's a bit cliche, I think, these days, but really looking at life and seeing how is medicine going to fit into my life. And I know so many of us trade so many of our, hopes and dreams and other aspirations to follow a particular career path in medicine. And sometimes that sacrifice is so much that it robs us of the joy that we can have in medicine. And so I'm not saying that you can't do particular careers. Be creative and really look at ways that you can do the things that you love in medicine without compromising on some things that are really important to you. So that would be one word of advice. In my general experience, happy humans make much better doctors. And so,
yes.
If you're getting to a point in life where things just, happiness can be fleeting, but if you're truly not satisfied deep in your soul, really start questioning that and really get to a place where you've got some peace and happiness, and your personal and professional life will benefit from that infinitely. So, and be open to change and flexibility and enjoying the journey. Medicine's a great career in that regard. You don't have to necessarily change careers to have a change in the activities you're doing each and every day, or the flow and the kind of pattern of your work, which is really unique. There are not a lot of professions where you can have that kind of diversity, under the same professional umbrella title. So, yeah, be creative, be flexible, and enjoy the journey.
Dr. Kerrie Stewart, a rural general practitioner based in Parkes, New South Wales. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening. Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.